So you've been getting a lot of the disembodied voice. So today you get to actually see me in the corner. Although students complain, hey, you're blocking my slide. Move aside. It's kind of like my grandkids when I walk in front of the TV. Anyway, so we're up to Module 8. What'll probably happen is I'm going to start condensing some of these modules because I realize I'm running out of weeks and we need to start getting into technology, which is what a lot of you are interested in. So you've got your strategic management model that we've gone through. So what is a business process? And what a business process is, or what's any process? Well, we have inputs and we want to transform those inputs into something else. If you want to talk about, excuse me, engineering processes, for example, what do we do with heat? We convert it into electricity, or we turn chemical power, such as fuel, into mechanical power, like cars. And we also do the same thing with business processes. So we take what our company has and we transform it. And the two standard types of ways you go about doing this is TQM, total quality management, which is you're making incremental improvements, that you have a mentality of constantly improving, and business process re-engineering, where you realize, something, we need more than something incremental. We need to rethink ourselves. And so these are the things we're going to talk about today. So here are the topics. Yeah, you can read that. And so I've discussed what is a change in business process. But naturally, if we have an output, there has to be some kind of metric that I can measure to see whether or not it's actually working. So I'm interested in like customer satisfaction or my revenue per output. If you're in marketing, it's like cost of customer acquisition. How much is it costing me to get a new customer? Things like that. And so here's an example of a process, and this is for procurement, getting stuff. And that's it. I need a spec. I submit a purchase order. I receive it. I verify if the invoice matches what I got in. And then I have payment to the vendor. Now, of course, what they leave... has anybody seen Rodney Dangerfield's Back to School? Anyway, what they did in that movie is Rodney Dangerfield was a small business owner, and so you have this theoretical guy talking about business, and he's like, well, what about the union guys? And you know who owns the trash business? They got their hands out, and he says, we don't talk about things like that. But one thing companies actually do is, in terms of payments to their vendors, is they take out a policy like not to pay them for 45 days or something like that, because the huge dollar amounts that you spend actually make quite a bit of difference in terms of cash flow. The CEO, typically the people he has reporting under him are the major functions, and the major business functions are manufacturing operations, accounting, human resources, and marketing. Now, typically what happens is that you have a COO and a CFO and a CTO. So you actually have another layer under the CEO. And the COO normally will have the marketing, the human resources, and the manufacturing and operations. Some have a chief marketing officer. And that's typically when it's a principal part of your business. The accounting and finance functions, those go under the CFO. And what's left out of here is product development, and that's your CTO. And so these are referred to as functional areas. Now, in a lot of companies, these are siloed organizations. However, really good companies find a way to meld these together. And so here are an example of the functional areas and some of the business processes that they do. For example, a big part of human resources is onboarding your employees. And that's like, can your employees hit the ground running? And so that's how come when you join a new enterprise, they have that nice, packet. But really good companies like Google and Apple and all actually take it a step further, meaning they have an entire process. Typically, it takes you anywhere from 3 to 6 months to become really acclimated to your workplace. Well, these guys, I want you acclimated in a week. And so they have somebody, sit down and work with you to get you going right away. And then there are the little embarrassing questions like, where's the bathroom? When do we get paid? And, new hires are typically afraid to ask these questions. And as it turns out, they are really important. For example, I was buying my own books and anything, and I took me like 2 semesters to find out I actually have a $500 budget for class materials. It's like, dang. Anyway, you can read about the other ones. Enterprise resource planning has to do with what do all these functional areas, how do they interact? Well, it's the passing of information. For example, manufacturing, they want to know if marketing has got new sales in or something like that because they like to see what's coming so they can prepare for it. And naturally, the financial systems, they want to know about that because maybe we have to spend more upfront money. And so what pulls them all together is information and the flow of information, how it's integrated together. You can read this yourself, but this is what the University Technology Office, their strategic plan was for information. And so here's a chart which shows an enterprise system and how it integrates everything together and how things are shared. You reduce duplication of work. What typically happens when you have acquisitions in companies is when they acquire you, you're growing. And so they leave you alone. It's like, yeah, go do your thing. But the moment you start growing, and I mean like you're not growing 20 or 30% anymore, what they'll typically do is get rid of duplicate functions. And the most common duplicate functions are finance and marketing. And so what they'll do is they'll pull that into like the mother company and get rid of all your people. In certain cases, they also get rid of the general manager. Anyway, so the more cross-functional you are, the tighter the organization you have. Like when you think about Walmart, their financial, their manufacturing operations and everything is very closely tied together. And so this is what it looks like. And how IT, now the thing about that IT is what drives the IT or what business processes do you have. And so an example we showed before was like procurement. That's just one process. Think about the hundreds or thousands of processes that you have for a corporation. And I should know because in the biomedical business, you have to have it documented that you're trained in these things. And that's all we did was go through training documents after training documents. And that's why you have people who like did nothing. All they did was go to meetings and do their training documents. And you can blow 40 hours a week easy on that. So that's why you get a lot of deadwood in these organizations. And that's why I was actually put on a documentation committee, meaning we would change the documentation instead of being like under section 3.1.2.6.7. And we tried to streamline it and make it more to feel like that you're a part of a process rather than a number in documentation. And so here's some more examples of different processes. Marketing and sales. Actually, what's being left out of here is customer meetings and things like that. Those are typically documented, and those are called customer relationship management systems, and they're a very big thing right now. TQM. And so TQM is about making incremental changes. And the way you can think of incremental changes is Six Sigma. And what Six Sigma is DMAIC. Define, measure, analyze, improve, control. And so you create this mentality of constantly improving and making things optimal. Over the summer, Dr. Cho was teaching a bunch of Saudi Arabian students entrepreneurship, and so I had to go up to WP Carey to do my teaching. And so, it's blazing hot this summer. It was 117 degrees. So I was trying to figure out what was the shortest distance between the parking garage and going to get inside the building. And so the problem is at the time I came in, you would be thinking, okay, on the first floor, well, people naturally, there's one short entry point and everybody parked. You could see the radial parking pattern from that point. People are pretty smart about these kind of things. And so you would start to think, okay, well, based on this radial pattern, where should I park to have the shortest distance to go there? And so I did that once and then realized, okay, I can do better than this. And then the thing that I realized is that point was very close to the stairwell. So instead of thinking two-dimensionally, I thought three-dimensionally. I parked up, I would automatically drive all the way up to the third floor because the distance of taking the steps was actually a lot less than walking across the parking garage. And so, yeah, it's a little example, but that's what TQM is about. For a lot of companies, they have reward systems for their employees if they do improve on better things. One thing we had at Abbott Laboratories was profit share. And every December, everybody loved their profit share check. And then one year, we didn't grow in profits, and so we didn't get a profit share check. And all of a sudden, there was this major revolt because for 25 straight years, we had a profit share check. And I didn't have a problem with it, but the problem is it becomes an entitlement. But here was the real problem. What people were upset about is that we lost the profit growth. But nobody ever bothered sitting down and telling people what could they do to make this happen. And so one thing you can do is bring down costs. For example, why do you need to stay in a 300-night hotel? Why don't you stay in the Courtyard by Marriott down the street for $89 a night? I mean, it's little things like this to get into this mentality of continuous improvement. And that's what TQM is about. Now, business process reengineering is when you make a radical shift. And that's that you rethink your business of what it is to do. Why? Because if I need to get here and I'm doing, I'm never going to make it. And so these are really difficult things because what do people do? They get cynical about management. Do they really need it? And so you have to really be dedicated, and you have to be in every part of your organization. There's a reason why you have the big five, and that's Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, and Facebook. They have change in their DNA, and they're totally committed to digital technology. Whereas other companies, when you start bringing digital technology, now as you can see in Walmart, they're trying to make a dedication to it, but they just don't have the muscle to do it. Here's an example of a major IT ERP chain, what they did at Michigan. You could just read the example for yourself. But in order to make that big a change, it has to be committed to everyone. GM made a major change, and that's that they got rid of a lot of their product lines. They realized that they were too diffused, and they got rid of them. Recently, Ford in the United States now basically just builds trucks and SUVs, maybe the Focus, and they've abandoned because they realize, something, we're not going to make passenger cars anymore. I think they might be doing a crossover, but Ford saw the writing on the wall too. It's like this isn't where we make money, but we make money in SUVs, and first and foremost, what they make money is in trucks. And so that's an example of business process reengineering. GE. Oh, Jeff Immelt. Oh, what a disaster that guy turned out to be. He decided he wanted to make GE a green company, and there's nothing wrong in that. And that's that he believed that's going to be the future and everything else. But he sold off a bunch of divisions that were actually quite profitable. And then GE's quite impressive. You know how they keep talking about how you actually have to lower taxes? Well, GE, they actually got a tax refund. It's like, how often do you see that out of a corporation? Because you take your losses and you carry them forward, and they finally got to the point where they couldn't carry forward their losses anymore, so they had to take the refund. But what it comes down to is you first need to develop the vision, and that's true of anything. What is your vision for this? How are you going to institute this change, and how do you know that it's actually working? And that's strategy. You have to have some kind of measure. If you don't have a metric, it's not a strategy. And so here's a flow diagram taking all those steps together. And so then you come to a point where, well, does this work or not? And then that's where you're looping around improving until you're finally sure that it actually works. And as you can imagine, this is a lot of work and a lot of commitment. But radical changes, what you're trying to do is you're trying to go for very large improvements, not very small ones. And so you could put this just up on the discussion board, and you could just talk to each other. But just think of something in your business or around you that you've seen before, which relates to TQM or a radical change. And that finishes up Module 8. Okay, now next week is winter break. And the in-class students are getting the week off. Now, I realize they're online and you're only supposed to be 15 weeks, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to fold in 2 lectures for the week after. I think we can do that because they're pretty straightforward topics. However, what I'd like for you to do, and I'll send out a message, since there's only a small number of you, and I do this in a lot of my online classes, I just want us to have a phone call. I just want to talk to you. I just want to see how you're doing with your final project. I know the final project's pretty straightforward, but I just want to kind of get your feedback on what you're getting out of this class. Plus, I just feel kind of disconnected from you. I mean, you're all good students and you're all doing what you're supposed to be doing, and so I just want to see what's on your minds. Anyway, have a great week.